In the wide history of the Sith, there are some atrocities that get swept under the rug, in the face of horrors such as the planet-destroying Death Star, or rituals that consume all life around them. There can be smaller events that fly beneath the notice of historians as well, but that doesn't make them any less deadly, or any less disturbing. Such was the case for the techno virus, and the horrific beasts that it created. Greetings acolytes and lore junkies, and welcome to the archives. In today's holocron, we are going to dive into one of the most nauseating Sith experiments created by a Dark Lady that almost no one ever brings up in the lore. There are many underappreciated Sith Lords and periods of war in the galactic timeline. If you find yourself interested in exploring more of the unknown and the underrated, then be sure to force crush that subscribe button. You'll then get notified when we post one of our holocrons all about your favorite topics. The birth of the technovirus arises during the 1,000-year period known as the New Sith Wars, spanning from 2000 to 1000 BBY. This time period was characterized by a sudden rise in various Sith Lords that threw everything they had at the Republic in a bid to destroy it once and for all. The Sith Order itself was akin to a dying star, fading out but refusing to do so without causing as much destruction as possible. However, each time they came close to eliminating or dominating the begrudging Republic, internal upsets would occur and the reigning Sith Lord would be assassinated by one of their own. Infighting was the biggest crutch of the Sith. Soon, one Dark Lady would make her staple on history with an experiment that nearly succeeded, an experiment that threatened to topple their ancient enemies in the Jedi and the Republic. This Sith Lord's name was Balia Darzu. She was one of the mysterious Shi-Do species, a race of shapeshifters. However, the form that she most often took was that of a human woman in a flight suit. However, she would soon craft herself a personalized suit of armor, one that was engineered specifically to kill Jedi. It was heavily armored and both endowed her with supernatural strength and stealth. By the year 1250 BBY, Darzu had seized power and become the reigning Dark Lord of the Sith. Her ideas for dominating the Jedi in battle surrounded the melding of force with technology. A new era of technological darkness began. This idea was made popular by men like Darth Tenebris, but the roots of that pursuit lie in Darzu. She was already adept with the life-twisting art of dark side alchemy, along with the ability known as Machu Daru, which was how she put together her battle suit to begin with. For those who need a refresher, Machu Daru was a Sith-created technique wherein one dominates a piece of technology using the Force. In doing so, they immediately attain the knowledge of how that technology works, just as if they had downloaded its schematics directly into their brain. Practice users can also fully bend and function machines at their will. However, Darzu, she wanted to take it further. No, she wanted to take it as far as it could go, perfecting control over technology. She then took to studying anatomy and biology of many different species of the stars. Combining all of her knowledge together, she would form a brand new incantation, known as Machu Daru Vitae, which created a nanogene spore that she called the technovirus. True to its name, it was a plague of microscopic nanites, those that would infect any organic host that it came into contact with. It made its way into the body through any available orifices, and then began growing metallic tumors. These tumors were grotesque perfection of organic technology. They spread just like regular cancer, and formed legions inside and outside of the body. But these tumors progressively rebuilt the still living creature, constructing a cyborg without any surgery or procedure necessary. Against their will, the host would be painfully transformed into a Sith spawn mutant known as a techno beast. Once fully transformed, most remnants of the living tissue on the creatures would have rotted away, leaving only small strands of flesh and sinew around by metallic scraps, rods, and wires. All who became techno beasts were hopelessly enslaved to Darzu, as the programming of the virus made it to where their minds were compelled by her dark side will. This facet of the technovirus was so potent that it remained even if Darzu were to die. Her holocron still retained her signature in the Force, and it served as a beacon to the techno beasts that would outlive her. For hundreds of years, the creatures would shamble around the holocron, protecting it as if it were still their living master. But now let's go into the design of the creatures. They were designed primarily for destruction, and most humanoid techno beasts would end up having their arms replaced by blades or saws. Larger techno beast variants, specifically those created from rancors and banthas, were forged into war machines. They had spikes integrated into their armor, and on their bodies along with missile launchers and blaster cannons grafted into their soldiers. soldiers. Perhaps the most foul part of the techno beasts is that they were capable of spreading the virus as well. They were infested with the nanogene spores and could release them in clouds from their mouth at other targets. In Darzu's day, the current conflict was known as the Sictus Wars. Darzu was fond of releasing the technovirus in a wanton wave on the battlefield. This, of course, contorted many helpless Republic troopers into creatures enslaved to a Dark Lady. The only ones who could resist the virus were Force wielders. Many Jedi and Sith were capable of sensing viral infections and poisons in their body. They then were able to use the Force to flush it out. Darth Bane famously, many years into the future, would manage to use the same dark side technique, literally burning the spore out of his body. This turned out to be a very fruitful discovery. Heat, you see, was the secret weakness to the techno beasts. They were quite vulnerable to lightsaber strikes, and waves of force lightning were capable of destroying a ton of them at once. Many years into the future, Darth Sidious wrote a manifesto called The Creation of Monsters. In it, he recommended that any wise Sith alchemist knows to place a specific weakness on their creature, just in case they ever grow out of their control. It seems that Darzu actually adhered to this wisdom, and kept a kill switch on her techno beast should anything ever go wrong. During the war, the Sith Lady would inflict a deliberate desecration against the Jedi, establishing her stronghold on their ancient sacred ancestral world of Tython. The world was often too difficult to find, and the Jedi had only recently rekindled their home. Darzu made her way to the world and made it her base of operation to house the techno beasts, her army of monsters. Monsters that she called the Meta-Necrons, now permitted to roam throughout the planet. Soon enough, all of her experiments created a dark side nexus on Tython and fully corrupted the birth planet of the Jedi, the ultimate desecration. And from this world, Darzu staged an assault deep into the core of the Republic, one of the Sith of the era powerful enough to do so, establishing her front line right in their backyard. Among many Sith that appeared in the new Sith Wars, Darzu was clearly one of the most dangerous. For around 20 years, the Sictus Wars would rampage until the year 1230 BBY. Darzu had since constructed an alliance with a cult of assassins known as the Macrosa Order. They had ties to the ancient Sith, and so they were sympathetic to their cause. However, due to unclear reasons, her allegiance with them ultimately fell apart. All that is known is that the Sith Lady had violated their trust, committing unwanted actions and experiments on their territory, a territory known as the Topani Sector. In revenge, they made a plot against the Dark Lady. At the same time, it turned out that many of Darzu's followers were about to betray her as well, as she was gaining too much power too quickly, and so, the Macrosa Order and Darzu's Sith followers both conspired against her, and poisoned her to death within her own fortress. A pretty unique way to go in Star Wars for a Sith Lord. With no more production of the Techno Beasts, the Sith's advance against the Republic slowed. The weapons would continue to be used by a few generations of Dark Lords, but their use would be eventually totally phased out. They proved to not be as useful without the leadership and the genius of their creator. What was left of the Meta-Necrons roamed around Darzu's empty stronghold for the next several hundred years. As we said earlier, her holocron remained the last vestige of her power and knowledge. So eventually, all of the techno beasts wandered their way into the inner sanctum where it lay. They were at this point only zombified shells. As the years drew on, they rusted, decayed, and fell to ruin. The only thing left of their bodies were the mechanical parts that stubbornly continued to live, and to even move. But the story is not over. Lord Bane would eventually journey to Tython in search of Darzu's holocron. Within the inner sanctum, he dueled the last army of the Meta-Necrons, and defeated them with ease. However, there were so many of them that it took him all night in order to do so. Had Bane not ended them once and for all, it's likely that the Techno Beast would have remained undead, shambling around the corpse of their master's dead citadel, lying in wait until they could unleash the technovirus on the galaxy once more. For the chaos of the new Sith Wars, there is no better figure that represents it than Darzu. Like Darth Ruin, who began the new Sith Wars, Darzu existed in an era where the Sith had grown powerful enough to truly threaten the Jedi Order and the Republic. Ruin shattered the Old Order centuries earlier, creating a galaxy where Sith warlords multiplied and battled across the stars. By Darzu's time, that philosophy had evolved into something more dangerous, Darzu herself was one of the most frightening innovators of the era, experimenting with alchemy and engineering a techno plague capable of twisting machines and living beings into obedient monsters. She positioned herself deep in Republic territory. She may have had one of the best strategic chances any Sith leader possessed to truly cripple the Republic during the new Sith Wars. But like so many in this era, she was not defeated by the Jedi. Instead, she was poisoned in her own citadel, betrayed and undermined by those beneath her, as well as by ancient dark factions that feared what she was becoming. It is a fascinating pattern of the new Sith Wars. The Sith grew powerful enough to topple the Republic. Yet again and again, their greatest Dark Lords were destroyed by their own followers rather than the Jedi themselves. This raises a chilling possibility. If Balia Darzu had survived, if the Sith had actually united beneath her, would the technovirus had spread across the galaxy, consuming fleets, armies, and entire worlds? Or would the Sith, as they always did in this era, have destroyed themselves anyway? But now, as always, I turn it over to you and your wise counsel, viewer. What do you think of the technovirus, the techno beasts, and Darzu herself? And of all of the Sith Lords that reigned during the new Sith Wars, who do you believe had the best chance at toppling the Republic? As always, thank you so much for watching, and may the Force serve you.